Hi, Nancy from Metal. So there we were, busy putting together a free After Effects project file on bevels using Shapeshifter AE. And who should contact us but Vincent Wynn with some questions on, you guessed it, bevels. We sent him over the free project file. He liked it so much that he asked to use it as part of a tutorial. Take it away, Vincent.
Hey everyone, it's Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. Today in this video tutorial, I just want to briefly discuss how displacement maps and bevels work within Shapeshifter for After Effects. Now, this topic has kind of kept me perplexed and very puzzled for the longest time until I hit up Chris over at Metal. He's the head guy over at Metal, and he really gave a really nice brief explanation on how bevels and displacement map work together to create these awesome looking bevels within Shapeshifter. And I just wanted to share that knowledge with you guys. So let's hop into After Effects here and just take a look at how things work together with Shapeshifter. So this is going to be a brief little overview on bevels and displacement maps. So first off, this composition on the right side here is kind of the source layer of the shape. So I created this nice simple star as well as this nice inner star in the center right here. And on the left side is the Shapeshifter composition, which is where Shapeshifter is applied. We have some basic lighting and some cameras. So nothing too complicated here. I'm just going to go to the source composition and just turn off the inner star for now. And turn off this adjustment layer right here. So right now what we have is a simple flat star, and over here on the left side we have the extruded version of that star with Shapeshifter applied. Now notice how the edges are very crisp and sharp on the right side right here, and because we're extruding this really sharp and crisp edge, that is reflected over to the Shapeshifter composition. See, as you can see, when we have a nice sharp edge over here, we are having a nice sharp edge on the extruded version as well. So if we apply a nice fast blur to this shape to kind of feather the edges out a little bit and blur the pixels out, you can see that we have a nice smoother edge on the left side. So it's pretty much reflective. If you do anything over here and maybe you blur it out a little bit, it's going to kind of blur the edges out a little bit over here to soften things up. So notice what happens when I go ahead and increase the fast blur value on the right side here. If I change the fast blur amount to 20, it's going to blur the edges a little bit more over here. And it's going to reflect that on the left side. As you can see, we have a really nice round circular bevel here. Maybe change this to even 30 or so. And you'll really see what we have. So if I just go ahead and shut off the fast blur, this is what we had before, a really nice, sharp, crisp edge. And when we apply a fast blur to it, to kind of soften things up, it also as well softens the edge of the pixel. So it's just something really cool to take a look at, and also something to keep in mind for your shapes in Shapeshifter. So a pretty cool way to add some nice variation to your shapes. So let's go ahead and put that aside, and let's go ahead and talk about bevels, because bevels are kind of a little bit different in Shapeshifter, but it's really cool. And I think other than the 3D extrusion and the deformers in Shapeshifter, I think that the displacement map and the displacement height is a really core feature in Shapeshifter and allows you to create some pretty interesting and abstract designs using Shapeshifter. And that's how we create some nice bevels in Shapeshifter as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the main composition. We just have no bevels here. It's very flat and very similar to the original source of the star. And I'm just going to turn on the fast blur just to get these nice soft edges and turn it back down to 10 so it's more subtle. Now the way displacement map works in Shapeshifter is pretty much the same way as how displacement map works in any other plugin for After Effects, just like Shapecode Form. Pretty much the white values affect the displacement map the most, and the black values are kind of negative values. They either do nothing or they kind of subtract from it. So for an example here, if I just turn on the inner star, you can see that it's nothing more than a darker star with a white stroke outline. And that is clearly reflected over here on the left side. As you can see, the darker values or the darker pixels are kind of a negative value, so they don't really get displaced that much, as you see here. But the brighter values, the white pixels right here, affect the displacement height a lot more. So how much displacement do the wider pixels get? And that is solely dependent on the displacement height parameter right here. So we're in the Shapeshifter composition and we have the Shapeshifter open right here. And as you can see, the displacement height is set to 70. So if we have some nice, really bright white pixels, they're going to be affecting the displacement height with this parameter right here. But since we're using a darker color for the inside, it's not fully using 70 for the displacement height. It's actually using something less. So again, the brighter pixels affect the displacement height a lot more than the darker values or darker pixels. They don't affect that much at all to the actual displacement height. So with that being said, you can create some pretty interesting designs using this displacement map feature right here. And definitely play around with gradients, definitely play around with the blurs, and don't forget to play around with the feather as well as the kind of softer edges of things. So let me just give you some brief ideas on what you can do with this kind of displacement height. So back in the source composition, I'm going to go to the inner star, and I'm just going to apply a nice fractal noise to the center. Drag that into the inner star. And if you guys know, the fractal noise applies this nice black and white fractal to the object, and that's just going to give us some variation as you see here. So you can create some pretty interesting textures or bump maps using the fractal noise, because once again, the black values affect the displacement a little bit differently than the white pixels right here. And that's one primary reason why we kind of use 16-bit and 32 bits using shapeshifters, because there's more gray values between black and white, so we have some more variation in pixels and color for the displacement map. So if we mess around with the contrast and mess around with the brightness, and if you want to have some more variation to this, we can apply a nice expression to the evolution. And it's just going to animate the inside a little bit. So if we do a quick RAM preview, you can see that we kind of have this nice warping animation inside the inner of the star. Kind of reminds me of Stargate. You get it? No? Okay. Anyways, that's just kind of give you a brief idea of what you can kind of do by animating some nice color gradients around. We can also create this pretty cool rippling effect by doing the same thing to the outer star. So if I just go ahead and disable the fractal noise here and apply a fractal noise to the bigger star, and you can see that it kind of creates this crazy texture, which is what you might be looking for. I'm going to go to the transform and check uniform scaling, and I'm just going to increase the width and kind of decrease the height a little bit. And you can create some pretty nice, thin, I guess, brush metal look if you tweak this around a little bit more to give it more of a nice bump texture to it if you wanted to. Again, these are just some basic ideas. I'm just going over some brief ideas that I have after talking to Chris here. And we can decrease the contrast to make it a little bit less obvious. And then if you want, you could as well animate the offset turbulence. So we kind of have this nice rippling down effect. So if I just animate this here, let's bring this down. So once again, you kind of get this cool rippling effect. Just something to think about. Definitely a lot of room for tweaking, but let's go ahead and delete that. So now that we have that covered, let's go ahead and take a look at another approach on how we can bring some more life to our shapeshifter object here. And that is with some nice animated bevels. So we took a look at how to create some nice animated bevels again by using color variation, dark pixels and brighter pixels to create some nice bevels here. Let's go take a look at a more animated approach to this. So for this, I'm going to use a nice mask. I'm going to go into the start source composition, and I'm going to create a new layer, and we're just going to call this mask and hit OK. And then I'm going to apply a star to it. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. And I'm just going to place it kind of in the center here. Maybe around there. And as you can see, because we have some color variation, the displacement map is going to be a little bit different. And if we apply a nice stroke effect to this mask layer, we can use the mask as kind of an outline for our stroke. We can set the paint style to transparent so we don't see our actual inside of our shape, and we just have the transparent style right here. And if we just increase the brush size a little bit so you can see a little bit better, you can see that we can create some pretty interesting bevels using the stroke, and we can actually animate this stroke as well by changing the start and end. So if I just animate, 3/4 here, you can see that we have some pretty interesting bevels. And of course, you can play around with the color. Once again, the border pixels give more of a displacement. So if this is too much for you, we can always tone it down a little bit, make it more of a gray color so it's not as thick. Or if you want a negative bevel, we can change it to black. And that's just going to give it some nice indentions. And once again, you can always animate these parameters, so it really is a lot of room and customization on what you can do for a shapeshifter here. So now that we have that kind of covered, let's go ahead and take a look at a more stylistic approach on how to create some pretty looking shapeshifter objects with some nice bevels. So I have this project file open here, and this project file has tons and tons of bevel styles, as well as different other styles as well. They're all using bevels, all using different types of textures and stuff like that. So a really neat project file. And this project file will be available for free download. So if you want to check it out, download it and experiment with it, all the information will be down below. So in this demonstration, I'm just going to be taking a look at the Bevel 8 style. And as you can see, this style is pretty interesting because it has a nice kind of outer bevel around it, as well as this nice brushed metal texture to it. And this can all be created using After Effects and Shapeshifter. So this is the main composition here. We just have some few lights set up just to kind of light the materials a little bit. We also have a camera for animation purposes. And then we have our main bevel composition here. So, keep all the things I said about the displacement heights and displacement maps in mind. I'm going to go ahead and open the displacement map right now. And as you can see, we have a nice bevel text with a nice white stroke. And that's what gives our nice final render a nice outside kind of bevel. Because you do remember that the white areas do have a higher displacement height compared to the darker pixels. So because of this white outline, we have a nice outer bevel as well. And just like how I simulated before with the fractal noise, you can also create a pretty nice brushed metal look using a fractal noise effect. So we pretty much matted out the fractal noise so it only appears in the shape of our text. And if we just take a look at the fractal noise here, we just have a really, really wide fractal noise and a very, very narrow and short, small scale height. So everything's nice and long. And that's just going to give us variation in color horizontally for our displacement height. And if you go back into the main composition, you'll see that these variations of pixel colors in the fractal noise is going to give us a variation of displacement heights for the texture. So as a result, we get these nice variations of displacement heights as our texture, which is going to create our nice brushed metal effect. So a pretty cool way to kind of create a nice interesting texture as well as bevel. And then we have a nice fast blur applied to the whole thing in an adjustment layer. And that's going to just kind of round off the corners. So we don't have a really sharp corner. We have this nice curvature corner here. As you see here, we have this kind of nice rounded off corners. So just a pretty interesting way to create some interesting bevel text. And once again, this project file will be available for free download. All the information will be down below. So let's go and take a look at another style here. We took a look at some bevels. Let's go and take a look at a particular style, style 9. There's been a lot of questions and comments about this particular style here. And I just wanted to briefly show you what the displacement map looks like for this particular style. So once again, we just have our basic lighting set up. Just give us some lights in the scene. We have a camera for animation purposes, as well as shapeshifter. So into the original source composition, you can see that we just have plain text here. And then back into our main composition, you get it's just normal text extruded using shapeshifter. But when we apply the CC Gridler effect onto the text, it's going to create some transparent holes into the text, as you see here. And once again, these transparent pixels are going to be negative values, so they're not really going to be displaced in height. And then once we have that turned on, you can go back into the main composition and see that those transparent areas or those transparent pixels are not displaced or extruded. So you can see that we have these nice cool little holes for our shapeshifter text right here. And that just once again gives a really nice interesting style, as well as kind of give it an interesting texture. So it just kind of shows you some many ways to really stylize and kind of play around with shapeshifter, and really shows how powerful shapeshifter can be using displacement maps and heights, as well as using color and transparency involved to kind of create an interesting style here. But this has just been a really quick overview on how to create some nice bevels using the displacement map. Don't forget to experiment. And hopefully it kind of opens your mind to some greater possibilities and some greater creativity with shapeshifters. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial. So once again, guys, I'm Vincent Wynn from CreativeDojo.net. I'll see you guys in the next video tutorial. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Vincent. Great stuff. You really showed us how easy it is to create any bevel style you want using Shapeshifter, and the bevels can be animated over time. Cool stuff. Thanks again.